To a bombshell report out of Canada now. This is astonishing. Investigative reporter Sam Cooper has uncovered this bombshell, the connection from the Trudeau government through the Liberal Party, Chinese fentanyl, and how this all ties together with the Liberal Party in Canada profiting off of the fentanyl crisis. Could this be the reason why the Trudeau government has been so hesitant to lock down the border and stop the flow of illegal fentanyl into the United States, because they're profiting off of it and they are facilitating it? Stop me if you've heard this before. This is unbelievable. David Creighton is joining us now, independent journalist out of Ottawa who writes at the Post Millennial. David, this is an unbelievable story. Can you help us unpack what this means?
Phenomenal, Clayton. And as I described it, mind-boggling. I don't know what else to say, because here we have evidence that Sam Cooper has unearthed, and Sam has done some marvelous investigative work on Chinese interference in Canadian elections and politics. And he's come out and said that the Liberal Party is a prime recipient of donations from the drug kingpins, the fentanyl kingpins, who are making this noxious, toxic drug in Canada at super meth labs, super fentanyl labs, and exporting it, yes, south of the border and elsewhere. It's phenomenal because this implicates the RCMP, the much vaunted, some people think the greatest police force in the world, as implicitly involved in this. With CSIS turning a blind eye to this, with government agencies refusing to acknowledge that Canada is integral to the fentanyl problem, because it's not just that we have these labs set up in the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia. We have been importing fentanyl, the precursors to fentanyl. For those listeners or viewers who aren't aware of that, these are the chemicals that are needed to essentially be refined or distilled into the final fentanyl product that makes it onto the streets, that is exported. But these precursors are coming in at the Vancouver port in huge quantities. Why? Because China controls the Vancouver ports, and less than 1% of these containers coming off the ships are being inspected. So is it any wonder why we keep saying, well, Canada is only responsible for 1% of the fentanyl entering the United States? In fact, CNN fact checker, who used to be the Toronto Star fact checker, Daniel Dale, recently said it was 0.22% of fentanyl was coming from Canada. Well, perhaps that's only because 0.22% is being discovered. Only that much is actually being found because they're not looking, and it's getting across the border. And wow, Clayton, the implications of this are just incredible, because we're hearing that the Drug Enforcement Agency, for instance, doesn't trust information coming from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, or CSIS. It just doesn't think we're serious in this country. You may recall a couple of months back, in fact, I wrote a story about this for the Post Millennial, and this was the Toronto Dominion Bank. This is a Canadian bank that works in the United States, operates in the United States, was fined $3 billion by the Justice Department for failing to monitor money laundering from, guess what? Fentanyl, terrorism, and human trafficking. Now, that was one of the last things the Justice Department under Joe Biden did in terms of huge prosecutions. Where was the Canadian government? Where was the Canadian Justice Department with a Canadian bank that was allowing this sort of activity to go on? It was actively complicit in money laundering for these illegal activities, and nothing happened in Canada. And that's what we're hearing, Clayton. The U.S. doesn't trust Canada because Canada doesn't prosecute. Canada doesn't even investigate these crimes. It never gets to court. And this is the primary problem. And this is why Donald Trump knows this too. He knows the fentanyl's coming in. He knows it's going undetected at the Vancouver ports. He knows it's getting across the border. And he knows the Canadian government's doing nothing about it except putting up its hands and saying, what's the problem here, Donald? It's all coming from Mexico. Canada's not a problem here. Clearly, the research that Sam and others are doing on this file indicate that Canada is not just a problem, it's a huge part of the problem. And we're not acknowledging this in Canada. We keep saying no big deal. And, to complicate matters, we can get into this in a second. Justin Trudeau is not delivering on his promise to secure the border. There's no boots on the ground. There's no 10,000 frontline personnel. He just appointed a fentanyl czar yesterday. But guess what? The former deputy commissioner of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He's been in the Trudeau cabinet as a deputy minister, as an advisor to Justin Trudeau since 2019. So this is another insider. This is another case of the fox. Fox is watching the chicken coop in Canada. This is not going to satisfy anybody.
No, I mean, you have a corrupt liberal government that's profiting off of the delivery of fentanyl into the United States. You have the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who are complicit in this. And now you're going to appoint someone from the RCMP to oversee this. I mean, it's laughable. I mean, it's stunningly laughable. I imagine Sam Cooper has the receipts on this. I mean, do we see direct payments here? I mean, how is this being funneled where the Chinese government is basically funneling this fentanyl into Canada and the Liberal government is profiting off of this? Do we know exactly where the profits are coming? I'm sure it's probably some sort of a money laundering plan, much the same way the Democrats have been profiting off the war in Ukraine in the United States and the money being funneled and money laundered. How are they profiting specifically?
Well, I doubt very much we're going to see a bank transaction with fentanyl being the cause. But you've hit the nail on the head with the word money, or the phrase money laundering. That's exactly what is going on here, because this money is being immediately transferred largely in Toronto and Vancouver into real estate. This is why there's this housing bubble in Canada. This is another piece of this research, which is fascinating. Now, the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, loves to talk about the fact that Canada has one of the lowest per capita real estate growth rates, housing rates in Canada. We produce less homes per capita than Japan, even though we've got this huge landmass. And Japan is just essentially a very small island. But Japan per capita is producing more homes, building more homes. Now, one of the reasons, of course, is the government takes 60% of the revenue it takes to create a home. And Poilievre is quite adept at pointing this out. The other reason is that real estate is so inflated in Canada. Vancouver is more expensive than any other city in North America, except New York and Los Angeles, or San Francisco. New York and it's third. Why is that? Because the housing market is so overblown, has become so bloated with fentanyl drug money being laundered. And this, of course, is another key to Canada's catastrophic economic situation. We can't build homes because we can't afford to build homes. The government takes something with the left hand, drug money pushes the price of these homes up with the right hand. And what I find fascinating about this whole revelation, and it really is a mind-boggling revelation, is the interrelationship between Chinese political interference in this country. We know that they're interfering in our elections. We now know that they're interfering in our port authorities, but they're creating a fentanyl crisis in Canada. They're contributing largely and greatly to the border insecurity. And they're also creating this phony housing crisis that we have in Canada, where people can't afford an apartment, can't afford to buy a home. And we have people literally in tents, in homeless encampments from Vancouver to Halifax. And this is all because nobody wants to point the finger at the chief cause, and that's fentanyl.
So, the background on all of this right now, or the cloud hanging over all of this, is Trump's tariffs here at the end of February. So Trump on February 1st made this deal with Trudeau. You're going to send 10,000 troops to the border. You're going to lock down your border, and we'll delay this tariff. It seems like you and I have covered this over the past few weeks. It seems like that was a lie from the beginning. Well, now time is running out. I mean, we've only got a few more days left. We got half a month here. February is a short month. What do you think is about to happen?
I think we're about to experience this, as Sam Cooper pointed out in his recent interview. We're going to have a Category 5 hurricane coming our way with tariffs. It's going to be nightmarish. And it's going to be entirely because Justin Trudeau has not taken this seriously. He got a 30-day, well, 28-day reprieve. I don't think he had any intention of following through. He's appointed a fentanyl czar, who I think is completely unacceptable. It will be completely unacceptable to the U.S. authorities, to the Trump administration. And Trudeau seems to know that. I do believe that he understands the economic catastrophe that tariffs will create. I think he welcomes it because it's an opportunity for the Liberal Party, as I've said time and time again, to play off the United States, to play against Donald Trump as this horrible nemesis for Canadians. And they don't have to run against conservatives in this country. They can run against Donald Trump and his administration in the States. Donald Trump has given Justin Trudeau a lifeline and the Liberal Party a lifeline with this threat of a tariff, because Trudeau and the Liberal Party have been able to mobilize Canadians around, some patriotic fervor and the idea that we have to fight back. But this is largely Justin Trudeau's doing because he doesn't take this issue seriously. We need to deal with this drug problem in Canada. We need to deal with this lack of security at the border, at the ports, and the fact that our institutions, our agencies no longer have any credibility on the international stage, especially with our most trusted trading, military, and economic partner, the United States. And if Trudeau thinks this is all going to blow over, he's sadly mistaken.
Right. You do not underestimate Trump. Trump doesn't bluff. So you could start by examining 100% of the cargo shipping containers that are coming into Canada instead of just 1%. That would be a starting place. So we'll see what Canada does. Are they digging their own grave under this Liberal government there? It's astonishing. It really is. David Creighton, thank you for this. Really appreciate your analysis of this, and great job to Sam Cooper as well on this investigative report here and this fentanyl crisis that continues to be the scourge of Canada and the United States. David, great to see you.
Nice to be back, Clayton, and we'll see you again soon.